What an incredible panel of speakers we have. And it's my great pleasure to bring our sixth delegate today. And as we spoke and listened to the other speakers, it's clear that the ocean is a critical resource for all of us. But our next speaker, Edward Shao's view is also that that critical resource that needs to be protected is also at the heart of the opportunity that we have to regenerate our environment and to regenerate our planet. And so his island story is actually a little different. I come from a small island where nobody's more than 100 kilometres from the sea, every single one of them in Ireland. But this story is a young man whose influence was actually Coney Island in New York. Edward is a New Yorker and an environmental engineer, was spending his time working as a lifeguard in Coney Island Beach, and realized that while focus had developed on planting trees and doing other things that were regenerating the land, there didn't seem to be the same focus and emphasis on regenerating the 70% of the earth that's covered with water. So his work has been, how can we harness and address the challenges that the ocean has, but then harness the ocean to be part of our sustainable solution? And so in doing that, he has introduced a project called QRRestore, which is a multifaceted program which he will explain, but it's dedicated to coral and coastal restoration. And he sees the potential of sargassum, a seaweed that can be used to create underwater fertilizers that can help coral growth and reduce CO2 in the ocean. It can even produce hydrogen gas, which can be an essential ingredient of our sustainable energy strategy going forward, reducing demand, of course, for fossil fuels. The NGO is energizing communities in Mexico, where sargassum is abundant, to harness this resource and change the destiny of our declining coral reefs. It's my great pleasure to introduce Edward Shao.
Solar panels, electric cars, carbon taxes and credits, no to fracking, yes to offshore wind. These are just some of the hot topics and headlines on climate change and environmentalism, and they are all about what's going on here on land. As a young environmental engineering college student back home in the US, I worked summers as a lifeguard at Coney Island Beach. With those summers came long hours staring at the horizon when I found myself wondering, why aren't we talking more about the oceans? The importance of our oceans cannot be overstated. It is the planet's largest biosphere, hosting up to 80% of all life here on Earth. It generates 50% of all oxygen that we breathe and absorbs 1/4 of all carbon dioxide emissions, essential for climate and weather regulation. It is also economically vital. And yet, here we are plundering the oceans as if though fish is a never-ending resource, flooding them with up to 13 million tons of plastic yearly. We pollute it with sunscreen, which is lethal to coral reefs. Add in seabed mining, deadly oil spills, untreated wastewater and agricultural runoff, and we have a recipe for a giant blue house of cards. When will we realize that our mysterious seas are an ecosystem just as complex and heartbreakingly fragile as the Amazon jungle? Today, 500 million people worldwide rely on the oceans for food, for livelihood, and for security. That could be 1 in every 20 people in this room currently facing food insecurity, rising tides, and an acidifying ocean with the next coming decades. I know every person in this room has gone through the same dashed dreams looking to the system for change as I did, and has come to the same realization that it's time to step up ourselves and manifest our own brighter realities. Towards that end, I've incorporated an NGO dedicated to United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 14, which is life underwater. The overall vision is to develop an industrial process that allows us to self-fund our own coral and coastal restoration campaigns, which will one day have a global reach. We will fund this work with the help of Caribbean Sargassum. You may have heard of beaches in Cancun and Guadalupe being swamped by this brown seaweed that smells like rotten eggs. It shows up right in front of your hotels and your resorts. This is called Sargassum fluitans. It is something we see as a sustainable resource, not a garbage. It's a huge opportunity to create a blue circular economy. We want to use the 17 million tons of sargassum stretching from Mexico down to Brazil to produce petrochemical-free fertilizer, underwater fertilizer substrate to help coral growth and reduce CO2 in the ocean. Also, a byproduct of this industrial process can also be further transformed into hydrogen gas, which, if sold worldwide, will both fund our coral and coastal restoration efforts and move the entire world away from petroleum. But enough about the science, because at the very heart of our vision are the local communities. As I'm giving this speech, we've just come from a trip to Mexico where we have successfully assembled our team, our superhero team, of local marine biologists, scuba divers, and environmental activists from all over the country. All of us got our scuba diving certificates and were trained in identifying coral diseases, restoring and propagating coral polyps. But as an NGO and commercial business, we at ProjectQRRestore have ambitions to spark a change in thinking, a realization that we need to change the way we generate and treat waste. We need to move away from degradable pesticides and reduce pollutant use. We need to go back to these age-old food production methods that don't deplete our ecosystems. We need to eliminate our destructive fishing methods, and we need a vastly advanced legal regulation in this arena. Right now, I look at each and every one of you, and I see people embedded in governments, large multinational companies, and small companies. But we are all in the same room now. So the last thing I will do before closing this speech is ask each and every one of you to turn to your neighbors and shake their hands. All right. Let's go. Yeah. Let's all put our differences aside and become ocean allies today. Thank you.